think one of the biggest success of Adespresso was really the branding. I've always cared a lot about building a brand. Everything comes down to being unique. What can you do to stand out of the crowd? Nowadays, 90% of the SaaS company use these very stylized illustration, very long hands and legs, and they all look the same. So it's really about what can we do that is different, that is unique to us, and then just be consistent, stick to it.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast with your boys, Matt Wolf and Joe Fear.
All right, Massimo, we are live. How you doing, my man?
Hello, doing great, except, I'm in Milan, so 1 year and a half in lockdown with a 3-year-old kid. Pretty much like I need a shrink, but overall, pretty exciting time.
I think a lot of people relate. I know I relate. I'm sure Matt does too. Is homeschooling kids here, 2 kids.
Yep.
So, it's a wild time.
I'm totally doing all the homeschooling.
Well, I know. Why am I giving you credit for that? It's all your wife. Well, it's fun to have you here. It's great to have you here. We actually didn't know this for a long time, but I know you've been listening to our podcast. You joined Pod Hacker, some of our programs. I was like, hold on. And Matt's like, I know him. I've read a lot of his work in the Adespresso days. And we're like, we got to have you on the show.
Totally. I love the show, guys. It's one of the very few podcasts which is always high energy, interesting content, except for this session, probably. But I actually love it. That's why actually I joined Pod Hacker, was looking into doing a bit of podcasting. And I suck at personal branding. I'm always like listening to your episode and listening to all these people that tell you, okay, you should pitch. All these guys send out email, and like 90% of a podcast or events have been, it was just because I signed up for something and someone recognized my name. Oh, you are the guy from Adespresso. Would you love to join the podcast? I never pitched anyone.
Hey, it's working for you, man. It's working.
It's working. Back at the Adespresso time, I was always wearing an Adespresso t-shirt because I suck at selling stuff. So I would just wear the t-shirt, and the branding of the company was so strong. I just would walk into, Traffic and Conversion Summit there in San Diego, which was one of my favorite events. And I will stand there and people will stop me. Hey, do you work in Adespresso?
No, I just got this free shirt. I just like to wear it. Man. Well, you have a business partner, I know, so it shores up some of the tactical stuff. We could probably get into some partnership stuff, this Adespresso story, content marketing. I know drove a lot of that. And then, you're doing some cool stuff. And I think you wrote this manifesto that I really enjoyed. So maybe we'll pick some of that stuff, kind of shows the lessons from your journey. But take us back.
Sure thing.
You started young, man. At 14 years old, you were doing some interesting things with computers, and
Yeah, I've always been kind of a nerd. So when I was 14-year-old, I was the youngest indicted for cyber crimes in Italy. Uh-oh. And yeah, actually, I had Juarez BBS. This was pre-internet. I'm old, so people were still dialing in with their modem and downloading video games. So I had this BBS with any kind of curated software, which I had to download somehow. So I was doing a lot of carding. Sorry, American people. AT&T cards, doing intercontinental call. Yep. Back then, when it was probably thousands of dollars. So
probably.
of intercontinental call. And always been in, I'm very curious. So I've always been in that kind of gray space, hacker world. Always enjoyed it. Being indicted 2 extra time when I was a bit older for always things related to cybercrime. But I've always got out of it with nothing, just a slap on the end. So I've been lucky.
Good for you. But what led after that? So I know you started some businesses, but it's always the tech stuff then, huh?
Yeah, sure. So I moved to Milan, which is the center of technology here in Italy. And I was doing university, but I really hated studying. So I was looking for excuses to drop off. IRC. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was like chat back then. Got to know a girl that randomly was the editor-in-chief of the top scientific magazine here in Italy. So I got a job as a journalist, started writing technology, which was amazing because it was 2000, full .com boom. I was 18, no wife, nothing. So I was flying all around the world for free, business class. It was a really fun period. At the same time, I knew that I would never make a meaningful amount of money out of journalist. So I had this crazy idea when I was like 19 of doing a clone of Slashdot, which was TechCrunch back then. It was like news for nerds, stuff that matter. And so I did it, and it was .com. It was crazy. I was just looking for someone to give me free hosting, and people were like, "Oh no, let's do a business plan. Let's raise a couple of millions of dollars." And back then, it all sounded crazy. So I just say, "Okay, I'll do it myself with my money," and pretty much realized that back then no one had an idea of a business model. You could talk with Yahoo, all those Lycos, all those big companies that no longer exist, but everyone was exchanging something. Yes, give us banner, we'll exchange it with content, or everyone was exchanging, but no one was buying. So I was like, okay, let's do website for brick and mortar store. Let's see if someone will give me $500 for a website, which we don't need. And so pivoted the business into an agency, no idea what I was doing. For probably 3 years, I was paying payroll out of credit card because there were no money in the bank for the company. And really, I didn't know how to sell. That's something that it's still true nowadays. Over time, I got smarter. Over time, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last 10 years. I started to understand that whatever you want to achieve, there are different ways to get there. And there is like no right or wrong. That kind of very strong conversation, like raising venture capital is bad. You need to be bootstrapped. If you like Russell Brunson, all these podcasts start with companies that didn't cheat taking venture capital. It works for building a tribe, for building a community. Base camp, other people very opinionated. It's this way or you are dead wrong. There are hundreds of different ways to achieve every goal, and there is no wrong or right way. And I think the easiest path to get whatever you want is really to understand what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And then, you can do self-improvement. You can read a lot of books. If you are an introvert, you'll always be an introvert. If you suck at selling, you can get better for sure, but it's never going to be your bread and butter. So I started studying what were my weaknesses and try to work around that. And my weaknesses was talking to people, basically. So I hated people. So basically, the way we solved the problem with the agency was, okay, let's just focus on something and become the best at that something, so that people will just call us and tell us, hey, do you want this work, rather than us pitching them.
So no other options. You just want to be the only option and be like, okay, come to me. Cool.
Reduce the option pool. So we pivoted the agency from doing websites and this kind of stuff to be very on the front end of very hard technology. So building very complex stuff where it was not like, oh, my cousin can do a website, but it was more like, okay, there are 3 companies in Italy that can build a portal that scale to 3-5 million visits per day. And that was the pivotal moment. That's when we started working with eBay across the world. We built a lot of stuff with eBay. It was a great moment. And that was also another great learning, like don't get a customer that is 98% of your revenue, because at some point they can get rid of you. And I think it was
credit cards.
And you're back to credit cards, but now with 10 people to pay out of credit cards and a big office. I think it was the Meg Whitman time when Meg Whitman resigned from CEO of eBay, and the new CEO was like, what? Where is Europe? What the fuck do we do with Europe? So like they fired 50 people in eBay Italy And suddenly we were without our biggest contract.
Wow.
Luckily, all the people there moved in different companies, and we kept growing. So that was a fun period.
So what did you do?
But,
I mean, you had to pivot then, right? Because that was 98% of your business.
yeah, but not really, because everyone that they fired in eBay had to find another job. So I let them do the dirty work for me. They found another job and then call us back because it was great working. So actually, we increased the number of customers and we scaled the revenue, just sitting there waiting, living out of like yearly contracts that we had with eBay anyway. And they had to honor without us doing anything because they didn't care anymore. So that was fun, but we still had the underlying problem that I hated people and most of our customers as an agency. And eBay was fun. eBay was more like, okay, let's do a usability testing. Let's pick people on the street, get them here and test the product. And then suddenly you start working with Heinz, but not Heinz on the ketchup, Heinz on their baby food company, and which was nice work, but we were developers and we will get the brief like, okay, this mini website should be 37% nature, 43% moms, and 12% branding. And like, okay. And all of these while respecting our brand identity, which we had to respect, like nature, everything was organic, and their brand color was orange and violet. So we had to do all this website that was always sunset to use the orange somewhere. And we don't need a call to action above the fold. It just ruined the aesthetic of the website. Let's put the call to action in the footer.
Oh, God.
Yeah, not fun.
So basically you're getting direction from clients and you're just like, this is all wrong, but shit,
yes.
I have no other option.
And the few work that actually became interesting, like we built insurance comparison, kind of Geico here in Italy, very nice project, but you were the contractor. When the project would become big enough, they would just internalize the team. If you were lucky, they would not steal your engineering, otherwise they would do. And you were never in control. Whenever something gets fun, usually the customer internalized it because things were going well. So we tried multiple times to build a product. It was probably 2008, between 2010, when subscription businesses were becoming a thing, SaaS businesses, etc. We tried a couple of times, but we were not really passionate. And that's always the big problem when you're running an agency, that you have people that are paying the bill. You want to build something else, but then there is always an urgency. There is always someone that, okay, I'll cover your money if you do this in 2 months instead of 4 months. And whenever we tried something that we were not passionate about, we would revert back to the agency work and never get there.
This sounds very familiar. Like we've done the same exact thing where you kind of go in waves and you can beat yourself up in the process. I know, it's like, oh man, like I want to do this, but this is good money, or, and then it kind of bounces back and forth. And yeah.
And then we were in Italy, not in Silicon Valley. So it was like always a question mark. Can we market it here in Italy? Could we raise funding, even if there are no angel investors or anything here in Italy back then? So we had a lifestyle business. It was paying the bills, like buy the apartment. It was a pretty good life, and never managed to get out of the comfort zone and really risk anything. But I did start a side business because having started as a journalist, I had this passion for content, and I wanted to find a way to make money writing content and not talking with customers. So that was my obsession, not talking with people. So we built a blog network. We say, okay, let's do it. We know about SEO. Let's do this. And we failed miserably. It was not bad. I'm still probably one of them. We built a series of like blog network. We had one blog around books, one blog around how to do stuff. etc. I think I'm still one of the most viewed video on how to make a tie knot.
Really? I probably learned
Yes.
from you.
Yeah.
I probably reference your video every single time I have to tie a tie.
You probably wish me death. I never watched that video again. And like after 5 years, I went back there. It was like 2 million views.
Wow.
And the comments were like full of people like, you should die immediately. Why are you doing it so fast? I cannot fall. Yeah, it was shocking how brutal people were, like wishing me death for how to make the knot of a tie.
Teaching you something, to making you how to
Yeah,
good.
just because it was too fast. Anyway, that was a pivotal moment because we learned something that changed my life. We learned that men, like males, are dumb.
True.
It was a huge discovery. That's how Adespresso is really born, discovering that male are dumb. Because
I'm surprised it took you that long to figure it out. Actually,
I was going to say the same.
Yeah, I knew it immediately. She did. She could have told me earlier before. But anyway, we
All
were
the
running.
women listening right now are just shaking their heads. They're just like,
Yeah, big win for you. And as I told you, one of the blog was about books, and we were just like reviewing any kind of book. And it was 2010. So the big moment, organic reach at 20% on Facebook, better than a newsletter. You can acquire like likes for 1 cent. So we started advertising and spending a lot of money. And I don't know how we made the first split test on our site. So, and we tested male versus female on a blog about books. And not surprisingly, getting a like from a man talking about books was like 50 cents. From a woman was 1 cent to get a like.
Wow.
So that was like, oh, wow. This thing of split testing really works. So we should do it at scale, which was impossible because the interface of the ads manager back then was ugly. And if you wanted to test 5 images, 5 audiences, it was like 100 of different ads. So we just went on the market for a solution. And there was no solution because usually in new market, what you do, you go enterprise, you hire 5 sales people, it's predictable, you know that if you make 100 phone calls, you get 100 customers. And for advertising networks, usually at the beginning, you get 2 kinds of people, like the smart people, affiliate marketer, that are always looking for the last opportunity, the cheapest opportunity, and an exploited market to make money. And you get the large enterprises, which can throw money at Facebook. Yeah, let's do 500,000 advertising. Let's see if it works. Otherwise, we don't care about 500,000. The mid-market, it's a late adopter. Usually, we don't go there immediately. So we found only one player. It didn't work for us. It was expensive because it was enterprise. It was always very sophisticated product because it was catered to people with data scientists, a lot of marketers. And that's when we said, okay, let's do this. Let's build it ourselves. It could work actually. And we sold the blog network. Luckily, we found a guy that was in like printed advertising. He was like, oh yes, digital is the new media. I'm gonna sell advertising on your blogs. I was like, sure. I have been losing money on this business for the last year. And I know about SEO. Good luck moving from printed businesses. Anyway, that was basically our seed investment for Adespresso. We sold the blog network.
That's really cool.
Started building Adespresso. And even there, it was crazy because we reached out to Facebook Italy, which was like one sales guy. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea what are APIs or how to give you access. But let's do this. Why don't you introduce me all your agency customers so I can sell the Facebook ads? Okay.
Can I get a percentage?
Doesn't work.
Maybe?
Yeah. But luckily, through the connection with eBay, we found one guy that from eBay had become VP in Facebook. And for him, we managed to talk with the right people in Menlo Park, and we got access to the API team in Facebook. Back then, it was getting access to the API for Facebook advertising was huge barrier of entry because they were closed. You need to get approval from Facebook, vetting. We had to check the product, which was great until it lasted. And that's how Adespresso got started.
Wow. I love that. It's kind of like this, you just have this big zigzag approach and, you're avoiding people at all costs, which I think is brilliant. Matt said this a lot to me. He's like, I hate people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trying to avoid people at all costs is not the best strategy for somebody who has a podcast. But
that is true. I mean,
that's it. It works.
It does.
No, still it works. And then Adespresso, the big success of Adespresso was me avoiding people. Because when we said, okay, let's do a Facebook ads tool, we were like, okay, work around your weaknesses. I don't like enterprise. I don't like 6 months sales cycle. And I don't know how to sell to this kind of customer. So let's do something for the small, medium businesses. And how do we acquire them at scale? Through content marketing. So actually, all the marketing strategy of Adespresso and the fact that it was catered toward small, medium businesses really started from me not being able to sell to enterprise customer. And so finding a way around that problem and saying, okay, let's do something at scale where we don't have to talk with customers. It's a service. You don't like it, you just unsubscribe.
Yeah. There's more people out there. Yeah.
I'm curious, when you decided you wanted to do Adespresso, you noticed there was a gap in the market. You decided you're going to push forward with it. What did you do at that point? Like, do you know development yourself? Did you get in and start coding some stuff up? Did you go hire somebody? Like, what did it look like after that? Like, once you made the decision, what happened next?
So we were really lucky. On my side, which is like my biggest weakness and my biggest strength probably, if you go on my blog, like the homepage says, jack of all trades, master of none. So I'm a developer. I'm a terrible developer. I didn't write a single line of Adespresso code, but I know how to code and I know how to talk with developers. I know if they are telling me like bullshit when they tell me it's 5 months development. I can understand maybe not if it's 10 days or 11 days, but I know if it's 5 days or 1 month. I'm not good at anything specific in marketing, but I kind of know everything, all the area of marketing. So, but I think for a founder, that's extremely good. Then you have to find other co-founder that can cover all the bases, a CTO that can really manage the team, etc. But for the CEO, for the founder, I think it's quite good to have a broad vision of all the market. And the other big luck is that we already had developers. We had the agency. So we just moved a couple of people to start working on Adespresso. And we were like, okay, let's build it. We have built it. And the day after, like newsletter from Facebook, we just moved from 2 kind of ads to 12 kind of ads. And we changed how bidding work. We introduced ad sets, etc. Like, okay, maybe we need another 6 months.
Well, that's the beauty and the curse. It's more the curse of Facebook. They're always changing things. And I'm sure you being tied in so close to Facebook, you have to pay attention to everything they're doing and pray that they're not going to screw something up.
So
go ahead.
So we knew how to build the product. We still didn't know really how to build a company around it. And that's when I partnered with Armando, my co-founder, who was on the other side, is an amazing CEO because he's super into financing, operation, managing the business, etc. And I would have really never made it without Armando and Carlo, who was the CTO, who's been amazing.
So
really,
did Armando came in like at the beginning of Adespresso then, right?
Armando basically came in at the beginning of Adespresso when we kind of had a product, but we had no idea where to go from there. And back then I was terrified of like rejection. So I would not do a lot of stuff like applying to an accelerator because we're like, we have this little toy that we love and we don't want to apply to an accelerator because if they say no, our life would be ruined. It would be the proof that it was all time wasted. While Armando was like, apply to 500 startups, apply to 500 startups, apply to 500 startups. And we got into 500 startups. Like really in 2 weeks, we had to basically pack everything, move from Milan to San Francisco, knowing that the agency would like bankrupt in 6 months just because I didn't know how to build a sales team. So all the relationship were like me and my network, and people knew me. It was not a repeatable thing without me. So, and that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly. I mean, it obviously panned out well. I mean, you moving to San Francisco. I'm sure you were were you single? I mean, you didn't have any. Obviously, you said you have a 3-year-old, so that was moons ago. You were able to just uproot and move across the world, basically.
I did have a girlfriend and a dog, but yeah, it was very challenging, but the relationship didn't last. I think like having a startup, especially if you're doing it in the Silicon Valley, so very competitive space, like move fast, having a startup is really very tough to reconcile with having a family, having a life. I think of a batch of 500 startups, most of the people that had a relationship ended there.
Oh yeah. Well, we had I know you mentioned this, I think in a previous talk or something, but Rand Fishkin, he was on our show, and Lost in Founder. Like, that's a true story of a startup type person. I mean, it's just, the journey's crazy.
That's the best book. I love Randy. He's really a great guy. And I think Lost and Founder is the only book that really describes how it really is to run a startup without all, that Silicon Valley fairy tales that they narrate, like on the big rounds, big exit. No one talks about the 95% of companies that fail, so unicorn, cheating, ice cream, etc. It's probably what I didn't like of San Francisco. I mean, it's a unique place. It was the best place to do Adespresso, really, to do most of the startups. On the other side, it's really transactional. I mean, even like Starbucks, barman will ask you, how much did you raise? How fast are you growing?
Wow.
And you always have to be, yes, it's awesome. Maybe you have 1,000 problems, but you don't know how to solve. But you always have to look confident. We are growing. We are doing amazing. Because you have to raise more money. You have to close deal. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was not really my lifestyle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I mean, obviously part of the story here is Adespresso grew quite a bit and ended up selling as well to a company that most of us have probably used their products, HootSuite. So I mean, that was a big deal.
That was a big deal, and really Adespresso was a rocket. I think one of the biggest success of Adespresso was really the branding. I've always cared a lot about building a brand, and both affiliate marketers, but broader marketers nowadays are over obsessed with anything that is measurable. And anything that is not measurable seems to be less important. And brand is usually something that you cannot measure. But even nowadays, when I sign up, or people recognize my name because of Adespresso, not because of me or what I've personally done. But I think that the brand perception of Adespresso was of a company way bigger than it actually was. I mean, it was a crazy ride. We went from 3 people to 50 people in less than 3 years, from 0 to 6 million revenue, which was an incredible accomplishment. But if I compare it to other companies that probably were doing 5 times our revenue, Adespresso had a way stronger brand recognition. Anyone in the marketing space, even if they didn't try it, recognized the Adespresso brand. And that's a huge asset, just because your advertising is going to be cheaper, because people are more willing to click on the ad because they recognize the brand. And people will churn less because they love the brand. Like, I love Rand Fishkin, I love Mods. I've been subscriber for Mods for 10 years, even if I was using Ahref daily. It just felt bad to unsubscribe from Mods because they were such a nice guys. And even from a conversion rate, from an activation standpoint, if you listen to, Pat Flynn says to you, tell you to use that kind of tool. Rand Fishkin tell you to use that kind of tool. If you go on that tool and maybe it sucks and you don't get any result out of it, but psychologically you feel ashamed. You feel like, okay, I must be the dumbass that don't know how to use this tool because all these amazing people are recommending me to use the tool. And that's really the power of brand. If I go, and that was like the big luck, our big luck was our top competitor was named Quaya, Qwaya. I mean, how do you build a brand around Quaya?
Yeah, nobody knows how to spell it when you say it.
How do you get to the website?
Go on the website, you don't even know how to spell it. And I think that was a huge accomplishment. And people nowadays really undervalue the importance of building a very strong brand. That's really a long-lasting value. And it doesn't take a lot of time in the end. I mean,
like what are a couple things that you see as the foundations of a good solid brand? Like I know you're starting you have a new company called Breadcrumbs. So like with that, you have a beautiful website. You have these, like, it looks very custom, it's unique, but I'm sure that's just part of it.
Yeah, but it really comes down to being unique. Like everything comes down to being unique. What can you do to stand out of the crowd? Like, nowadays, 90% of the SaaS company use these very stylized illustration, very long hands and legs, and they all look the same. So it's really about what can we do that is different, but it's unique to us, and then just be consistent, stick to it. So with Adespresso, we had the mascot. We had the mascot with the mustaches, which was called Walter. No one knows that it was called Walter, but, and fun story, like our designer, who's also the designer for Breadcrumbs, who was a co-founder of Adespresso, is Spanish. So I only wanted to write waiter for the mascot because he was the waiter at the cafe. But he wrote Walter because it's English, it's just so bad. And that's why he was named Walter, because he was the waiter.
I like it.
So that was it for Adespresso. And then being consistent, like every illustration, even if we literally had to hire one guy just to do the illustration for a blog post, which most of the blog will never hire someone or spend $100, $200 just for the illustration. They take stock photos. But that's what really made the difference. If you see an ad or a blog post from Adespresso, you recognize it immediately because it always has the unique styling, it always has the mascot, and immediately you say, okay, this content is from Adespresso, it's actually good. And with Breadcrumbs, we are doing the same. We didn't want to go with a mascot. We kind of got stuck in the middle. If you see in the logo, we have this, like, I don't know what it is. It's probably a chicken.
Probably a chicken.
It's a chicken. It's quite controversial. Jesus, the designer, came out with it. We loved it, and we were like, "What it is?" Because like my co-founder were like, "Oh, it needs to be something important, like an eagle." I was like, "No, it doesn't look like an eagle. I'm not even sure if it knows how to fly. It's like a circle."
I've had chickens. They're dumb animals.
Yeah,
they're like men.
Probably and it's eating breadcrumbs. An eagle would eat a chicken or a rabbit, not breadcrumbs. You don't see an eagle like starving for breadcrumbs.
I love the fact that on your manifesto page, which everyone, we'll link to it in the show notes. I like how on the hood of this car, it looks like a Rolls Royce on the front, and you have a chicken as the emblem eating breadcrumbs. It's like, yeah, usually you have this stoic eagle, this huge majestic thing. Nope.
It's a chicken.
I love it.
Yeah. But on the other side, we are not sure yet if that's going to be the mascot. But I was like looking at Batman cartoons from the 90s, the good ones, but at the dark theme. I was like, hey, let's try to use that style. So Jesus, again, and it's great to have Jesus in your team anyway. I mean, it's always commended. Oh. And I started working around it. And so he came out with this style, a bit vintage, a mix between cartoons, comics, Batman, and it's pretty unique. which in the end, it's what really matters. I mean, even if we don't have a mascot, when people will look at any illustration, they immediately realize it. And nowadays I'm doing something, but I'm not usually comfortable with it because I'm not a people guy, like doing outreach with LinkedIn because breadcrumbs is a bit more up market. Everyone's like, look, I totally don't care about your product. Actually, I've done outreach to you and you told me to go fuck myself. So I'm not going to look at your product. But by the way, the style of your website is really amazing. So the branding is really something that is stuck. So really happy about it.
I like that. You get attention that way. Yeah, without having to do the people thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And then you have to be consistent. So I'm like obsessed with it. So you don't release a video that is not exactly that yellow. If you go at a conference, you wear the t-shirt of a company, etc. And over time, if you're doing something valuable, the brand will be recognized, which is, I think, another important topic for the success of Adespresso, which is value. I don't have a name for it. You can figure it out. Value-based marketing. I've Googled it, and actually people, when you talk about value-based things, more about moral value. But in the end, I think business marketing, it's always an exchange of value. You have to think about it. Okay, I'm giving you value and I'm getting value, which very often is what a lot of people are not doing. They're doing content marketing for getting traffic, tricking Google into sending traffic to a page that doesn't add any value. The reality is that there are probably, 3 million blog posts published every day. Most of them are just a bunch of shit. I mean, you shouldn't. Sorry, guys, I swear a lot. I know.
So don't worry.
That's part of the Italian part of me.
I like it.
Which is 100% because I'm Italian. So, and
I would hope so.
I didn't do a premise on this podcast, on this recording. I forgot the premise. Sorry about my Italian English. Even for I live in San Francisco, I still speak shitty English. But
keep going. Yeah, the value exchange.
Which is another part of the branding I discovered. Like at Adespresso, it's the brand. We wanted something that recalled the fact that we are Italian. And also me speaking bad English tied with a brand which was Italian. It was okay. Like as long as I told people, hey guys, sorry, I'm Italian and my English is not perfect, it became part of a brand. And people actually enjoyed it rather than saying, okay, I'm not listening to this guy just because I don't understand 1 out of every 5 words that he says. So that was fun. But the approach with Adespresso was, again, how do we stand out with content, which was important in 2011. It's even more important nowadays where even inbound is really challenging because it's getting very expensive, very competitive. Brian Dean and his damn skyrocket technique. Everyone is writing 5,000 words blog post, even if they have nothing interesting to say. But to outrank, you have to write something that is even more boring and longer. So you have to write 7,000 word content, which with no ideas.
Well, how about this? You now have AI copywriting tools, so you could just keep hitting the refresh button and get more blog posts written.
That's actually true. That's something that is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I got access to GPT-3 just last week. Blew my mind what it's capable. It writes English way better than me. But yeah, that's going to be another area where it's going to be even more important to think, how do I stand out? Because this content and AI can do it in 3 seconds. And with Adespresso, we really start thinking okay, let's produce content, but how do we produce content that actually has value for people? Like what I hate is like 10 tips for social media marketing, but only the pros know. And the first one is like, be open and transparent. Like, what the fuck? Of course, it's social media. What should I be? Like, spooky and introvert if I'm doing social media? Like, 10 WordPress plugin no one told you you cannot live without. And the first one is a Kismet, which is the spam filter that comes by default with any WordPress installation. You are just wasting my time. You are not giving me value. Then you want to do the roundup post, that's fine. That's a form of value. I don't spend 5 hours researching 20 different articles. You read all of them and you give me the roundup. That's an amazing way to deliver value. With Adespresso, we had data. Like it was full of this, like Facebook ads guru but never created a campaign in their life. We actually leveraged them because we wrote better content than them, because we were actually testing things. We had the unique data, but no one else could do an article analyzing $300 million in advertising. So we will produce something that was true and useful for our customer. And the advantage was that then all the gurus that never created a Facebook ad campaign in their life to be credible, they had to show some kind of data. So they will link back to our article, which were among the very few that that unique content. So we created this snowball effect. SEO is really a snowball. When it starts, it's really small, not driving traffic. But as you gain domain authority in that space, as you gain links, then it's really a snowball, to a point which, admittedly, in the last period, I could get like the janitor of the company to write the content on the blog and it would rank first, no matter what was written there.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's so smart to like be so data driven, because you become everybody's source. So everybody else that's blogging around the same topics, you're the source they point to actually prove the data. Did you do any sort of like cold outreach or anything like that to like prime the pump to get people aware of the new content?
Never asked for, never did any outreach, never did link building. It's really, you need to be masochist to do link building outreach, because you will get so many no's and like people saying no. But I got a tip from Ross at Siege Media, which is go after elder people, because no one cares about elder people nowadays. And if you find blog about, like, I don't know, retirement, how to live after 60 is a great life, etc. If you can find an angle, which is like Facebook ads for old people or something like that, when you do outreach to those kind of blog, they are so excited that someone cared about them and reach out to them proposing an article that they will link to you immediately.
Good point. Well, yeah. So basically, you're finding an audience who probably needs some of you, some data to back up their story or their narrative. So they're almost obligated to link to you to make themselves almost more credible, or boost the value there.
If you can become the data source, I think data-driven articles are the best kind of content, because they are really magnet for links. And again, same as for the agency, we work around the problem. How can we do something that is so amazing that people will just link to us and come without us chasing them? And another thing that worked great with Adespresso is the concept of code as content. So content doesn't strictly need to be an article. Our most successful thing in Adespresso that really doubled the traffic, probably tripled the traffic, was our ads gallery. So, which was a piece of code. I just like to have example for my content. I was just taking screenshot of ads when I saw them on Facebook, and then I had 1,000. I just said, okay, let's make a search engine out of these 1,000 screenshots. And we released the first ads gallery, which was like, go there, search for ebook and see all the ads around ebooks. And that became huge. Like we had 1 million ads on that page. And it was super linkable, because even people like John Loomer, which I really like, but his business is selling courses. He will never tell you, hey, use Adespresso just because it's a small audience. His business is selling, hey, this is how you use Ads Manager. So directly would have never pitched or promoted Adespresso. But with Ads Gallery was a fantastic thing that he could pitch in all his webinar, all his blog posts, because it was like, spy on your competitor. This is the best tool to do it. So just think what you can do to be unique so that people will have to come your way.
Yeah, that's super smart. I like it a lot. So basically you have a giant swipe file to just get inspiration, and everybody links to that.
Yeah, people are like, oh my God, it's so valuable. I got to link to this thing, even if I'm not saying go buy their stuff. And you're getting some love.
$50 WordPress plugin, you just customize it, you gather the content, you can get a VA to do it for anything. Like Landing page, pricing page, examples, whatever you can think of. That's fairly simple. Chrome extension that works extremely well. It gives you direct access on the user browser. That's great as well. But really, there is a ton of things with like Visual Website Optimizer, which was like company for split testing before Optimizely. They had a page with probably 5 lines of JavaScript. It was like how to calculate statistical significance of an A/B test. I think that page took them 30 minutes to code, and it was ranking #1. They were the first to do it. I think it generated millions of visitors just with that page. Wow. So code as content is another tactic that I love for especially for link building. It's free tools are extremely linkable.
Yeah, no, that's super smart. The sort of last thing I want to get in before we wrap up here is to talk about the exit a little bit. I'm curious, how did you approach HootSuite? Did HootSuite approach you? Like, how did the exit play out there for Adespresso?
Sure. So no, we didn't approach them with Adespresso. Even we were the San Francisco startup. We were funded, but like we were like homeless by San Francisco standard. We had raised 1.5 million, which San Francisco is like, no one refused.
That's like 1 month's rent in San Francisco.
Yeah, kind of like that. And we were profitable. So whenever we raised money, we raised money on our terms, not because we had to. And that was the same for selling the company. We didn't have to sell the company. The business was growing aggressively. We were first approached by HootSuite. On the other side, they recognized the decline of organic reach, which is something nowadays no one even talk about organic reach. You're not reaching anyone. It's meaningless if it's 0.0005 or it went down to 0.003. It's nothing. And so they knew that they needed an advertising angle to keep growing aggressively and like serve their customer in the best way possible. What was even better for us is that they had tried and they had failed at building the right product. So they knew that they needed something, and they also knew that they couldn't, it was not the best way to build internally. They needed something that had the expertise around Facebook advertising. So we were approached, like we didn't really like the offer. We partnered, we built an integration into HootSuite, and after 5 months, they came back and said, okay, we really want to buy you. Here's the good offer now. And we liked it. I think they hated us during that period because we were like, no, we thought about it now. Like we are not going to sell you a company. But we really liked HootSuite. It was the same approach, like agency that became a tool, huge self-service footprint, very SEO and content driven. On the other side, they had built that enterprise sales engine that we knew at some point we would have to build, but we didn't know how to approach it. So it was a match made in heaven, very similar company culture. So there was a lot of negotiation, a lot of thinking. And on the other side, Facebook was really becoming more and more aggressive in eating up all the differentiating features of Adespresso. They were implementing A/B testing, a lot of stuff. So we knew that, again, it was the snowball of the content, but this one was a snowball that became an avalanche, and you had to every day run faster than Facebook or find a way to move on the site, and that the avalanche go. In that period, we were starting to look into Google, which we started to really adding more network as the only way to really differentiate from Facebook. And so we evaluated the advantages of being within a bigger organization, the advantages of being alone ourselves, but with all the risk associated to Facebook, which from day zero, everyone invested. Everyone was like, why just Facebook? And so in the end, we decided to sell the company, which, given the direction Facebook has gone after that with Cambridge Analytica, really Facebook really changed a lot after Cambridge Analytica. It was really an amazing company, great people. The great people stayed, but really there was a lot more bureaucracy, like more white collar people controlling everything that happened within the ecosystem. So it was really the right choice to set up Adespresso
It seems like
at that point in time.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. I was after all the negotiation, like HootSuite board really wanted to close it before Christmas. It was like the 23rd of December, 10 p.m. I was out drunk in a pub here in Milan. And we were like, okay, let's get it done. Call with the lawyers. Okay, let's sign everything and join them. And
so how do you feel initially when you're like, okay, it's done? And also maybe because you sound like a creator, you always want to create. Obviously, you moved on to another project. Did you get like bored after a while, or was there anything that happened?
Yes, I got bored, but it's not. HootSuite is a great company. It's just a company of 1,000 people. And I understood that they really enjoy the $0 to $10 million phase. When you are in a 1,000 people company, everything is different. And, there is an org chart and somehow you need to fit in a square of the org chart. And I'm just like, jack of all trades, master of none. It was very challenging. It was like, okay, where do you go? Product, marketing. And I was like, okay, I want to come back to Italy. All the development team is there. So I'll pick the product square. But on the other side, I had the vision of a product. I was not really a project manager, which they quickly realized and sent a great guy from Vancouver in Italy to help me cover.
So you actually stayed on. You actually stayed on at HootSuite for a while?
Yeah. I stayed on HootSuite until... until November last year. And I really enjoyed it. I wanted to see the ride, but I was not emotional about it, which was surprising for me as well. I was like, okay, it's business. You bought the company. Let's do whatever it's like. Even in the first conversation, like you want to keep the Adespresso brand and call it HootSuite Ads. Let's just look at the number. If it doubles the revenue, who cares about the Adespresso? I mean, it was a fun ride. But in the end, business is business. So let's do what makes more sense. I was surprised. That's the part of me that was very influenced by America. Before, with the agency, it was like, okay, it's my baby. I'll leave it to my kids when I get older.
Legacy.
And with America, staying in US, I got more used to this thing. It's just business. When Adespresso is 18, okay, he needs to get out of your home, and he needs to do his journey by himself. Get a job, get a life. It's no longer your problem. So
that is a good point. Yeah, they could be transactional as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good insight, man. Thanks for being so open. And really quick before we wrap up with breadcrumbs, I know it's a little higher level, but is there anything that like maybe our audience of digital marketers and entrepreneurs who are looking to grow? Because I know it's all about lead scoring and really paying attention to the data in a different way.
I think the overall idea behind breadcrumbs is this concept of revenue acceleration, which is like the definition of RevOps, but it's more about it's something that I learned at HootSuite. In all the company that have a marketing team and sales team, there is this friction where like marketing blames sales for not increasing revenue, and sales is more like, oh no, it's all marketing's fault because they are not generating enough leads or the quality is very bad. So we really wrote down this manifesto of revenue acceleration as a way of like breaking down silos, aligning your whole organization, having revenue as your North Star metrics, which also lead to a concept then of revenue marketing. Like, I hate these things. In every big company, salespeople are compensated and have a lot of bonuses based on how much they generate in revenue. And like marketing is like, no, this is your salary. That's it. You have goals, but you are not compensated because you are not touching revenue unless you are self-service, which drives me crazy. And nowadays with attribution, etc., it's really should be a single team working together, having common goals, which should be revenue and like working closely. And so the long-term vision is to really empower people to implement this revenue acceleration, which has a lot of different declination. The low-hanging fruit, the problem that we are solving in the short term is lead scoring, which is I get 10,000 leads in, and I have 2 salespeople. They can only call 100 of them out of the 1,000 that we gathered. I really want to call the 100 that really matters. And lead scoring has been around for a long time, but incredibly, it's still a huge problem for most of the companies, because most of the people look at lead scoring just from a fit perspective. So demographic. Okay, you are Joe, you are Matt, you work in a 50 people company, you work in a 100 people company. So I'll call Matt because it's more similar to my buyer persona, which is correct. It's a part of lead scoring and also a part of breadcrumbs. But in breadcrumbs, we are adding another component, which is frequency and recency. So what are these people doing? Because Matt has 100 people company, but the last time he visited my website is 3 months ago, and he never visited the pricing page and never interacted. While Joe, on the other side, smaller company, yes, but on the other side, he has checked the pricing page. He has converted to all this form. He attended all the webinars. He's engaging with the free trial and also a BM site, so account-based marketing. And also other 5 people in Joe's company are actually looking at the website. So your salespeople tomorrow morning, their first thing should be calling Joe, while Matt right now can only receive an automated email workflow that will do it automatically without salespeople wasting their time. So breadcrumbs really will connect all your data sources, analyze them, help you may build a model that will score your leads. Wow. And the other interesting thing is that we like to be machine assisted, not machine driven. So we are using machine learning to give you advices, to explain you how to build your prediction model, what's best for you, but it doesn't do it for you. It's not this black box where you just for a number and it spit out Joe is 95. But salespeople doesn't understand why Joe is 95. They don't trust the black box and they will never call Joe. So it's really important to create this alignment between marketing and sales where they trust each other and they trust the scoring model because they have built it together and they know why Joe is 95. So that's the approach.
That's a great, I love the mission and the approach, so it's, I know right now, you're HubSpot level and all of that. So, if you're listening and if you're like that, go check out breadcrumbs, but definitely check out the manifesto because I think that's brilliant. And you said you might make it more actionable pretty soon. So maybe check back or something, when that happens.
We'll move from the manifesto to the implementation framework at some point.
I like it.
Very cool. Is there anywhere else you want people to go after listening to this episode?
Sure. They can go on my blog, stevebyzero.io. I try to write at least 1 post per month. It's more like my consideration on marketing, a lot of books review, etc. Go there, sign up for the newsletter. Actually, I'm not actionable, so I've not sent a single newsletter yet. At some point, I will send you an email. But go check it out.
On the list, dividebyzero.io. Get on the list. Maybe he'll email you someday.
One day. All right, Max. It was a good time, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed recording this episode with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.